She returned his lost keychain without asking for anything. She didn't know he was a single-dad CEO, millionaire. "Hi, I found something I think belongs to you. There's a number on it." Jessica's voice was calm, but her fingers trembled slightly around the old keychain resting in her palm. It was almost 2 a.m. The tall glass tower where she worked as a janitor had long fallen into silence. The echo of her footsteps had been her only company until she spotted the object lying just beside the emergency stairwell door on the 23rd floor. Small, metal, scratched, but unmistakably personal. It had a child's drawing on it, etched into a plastic charm, a stick figure with a cape and the words, "Come home safe, Dad," scribbled beside a faded heart. The metal ring was bent slightly, and the attached key looked unused. On the back, scrawled in faded marker, was a phone number. No name, no brand. She hadn't hesitated. Something about it felt too important to ignore. The man who answered had a low voice, steady but surprised. Yes, that's mine, thank you. Can I meet you somewhere?" Jessica bit her lip. "I work in the building. I'm on the night shift. I could leave it at the front desk or... I'll be near the parking garage in about 20 minutes. Pause. "That works. Thank you again." 20 minutes later, Jessica descended into the nearly empty underground garage, the echo of her boots bouncing off the concrete walls. It was dim, lit only by emergency lights. She waited near the security desk, the keychain gripped tightly in her fingers. Footsteps approached. A tall man in a dark hoodie appeared from the shadows. He wore jeans and a baseball cap pulled low. His hands were in his pockets, and he looked ordinary. Not polished or smug like the executives upstairs, just quiet, calm. "You found it?" he asked gently. His eyes locked on the keychain. Jessica held it out. "It was by the stairs on the 23rd. I almost missed it." He took it slowly, like she had just returned a piece of his heart. His thumb brushed over the worn charm, and he exhaled as if he had been holding his breath for hours. "Just the night guy," he said with a half-smile, meeting her eyes for the first time. "Thanks for returning it." Jessica offered a small nod, unsure what to say. It looked important. "It is," he said, "more than you think." She turned to leave, brushing a stray piece of hair behind her ear, but his voice stopped her. "Wait, what's your name?" She hesitated. "Jessica." "I'm Alan." He held up the keychain. "My daughter made this for me when she was 3. She's 5 now, but she still checks if I carry it." Jessica smiled faintly. "It's sweet. She must really love you." He looked down. "I hope so." There was silence, not awkward but full, like both of them wanted to say something more but did not know how. Then Jessica gave a polite nod and turned toward the elevator. "Good night, Alan." "Good night, Jessica." As she disappeared into the lift, Alan stood there a moment longer, fingers closed around the keychain, eyes distant. For the first time in a long while, someone had done something kind without knowing who he was, without asking for anything, just because it was right. And that stayed with him. Jessica rode the elevator back up, her heart a little lighter. She did not know why the encounter affected her, but it did. There was something in his voice, soft, tired, grateful. It felt honest. By the time she returned to mopping the 17th floor hallway, she had almost convinced herself it was just a moment, nothing more. But something told her, something in the quiet of the garage, in the way he had held that keychain like a lifeline, that this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Jessica did not expect to see him again. But 4 nights later, just as she wheeled her mop bucket onto the 15th floor, she heard it. The familiar, low hum of footsteps. Not rushed, not managerial, just deliberate. She turned the corner, heart skipping slightly. There he was, sitting on the windowsill near the emergency exit, hood up, sleeves rolled to the elbows. His eyes met hers like he had been expecting her. Jessica blinked. "You again?" Alan gave a small shrug. "Just doing my rounds. Night guard duties and all that." She narrowed her eyes, unconvinced. Since when do night guards wear Nikes and carry espresso thermoses? He grinned. Budget cuts, no uniform. She almost laughed. Instead, she leaned her mop against the wall and walked closer, arms folded. You're really committed to this bit. Alan patted the ledge beside him. Break time. I promise I won't write you up. Jessica hesitated for just a second before she sat down beside him. What if I write you up? He glanced sideways. I'd take it, but only if you let me explain the coffee situation. I come bearing caffeine. She accepted the cup he handed her. Still warm, still tea. He remembered. They sat in silence for a few beats, the quiet hum of the building around them. Jessica's ponytail was slightly askew, and she smelled faintly of citrus cleaner and old pages. Alan noticed and smiled. You always clean this floor first? He asked. She nodded. It's the only one with decent airflow. Doesn't smell like printers. He chuckled. Good strategy. A pause. Then he asked, So what's the end goal? You can't want to clean floors forever. She glanced at him, surprised by how gently he asked. I want to open a bookshop, she said finally. Second hand, maybe with a little tea bar. No Wi-Fi, just soft chairs and time. He looked impressed. You've really thought about this? Jessica smiled. Every detail, even the chalkboard menus. I've drawn it 100 times in my head. I'd go there, Alan said quietly. She looked at him. You read? Sometimes, he said, sipping. Mostly to my daughter. She's 5. Won't fall asleep until I tell her some ridiculous story about dragons or dancing bears. Jessica's lips curled. Sounds like she runs the house. She does, he admitted. I just pay the bills. They both laughed, trying not to let the sound echo too loud down the hall. Suddenly Jessica leaned in, mock whispering. Are we going to get in trouble for loitering? Alan whitened his eyes. Extremely. I've already filed 3 complaints against myself. She covered her mouth, stifling a giggle. Careful! If someone sees you, they might expect you to actually fix a broken light bulb. He leaned back, feigning horror. Don't ruin my perfect cover. For a moment, the corporate high-riser didn't feel sterile. It felt like a place where 2 strangers with hidden lives could meet between mop strokes and fake security rounds. Jessica finally stood, brushing imaginary dust from her pants. I've got 10 more floors. You should get back to pretending to be useful. Alan hopped off the ledge. Then I guess I'll keep pretending tomorrow. She turned halfway, looked over her shoulder. Same time. Same time, he confirmed. As she wheeled her cart away, Alan stood still for a moment longer, watching her disappear down the hall. Then he slipped a keychain from his hoodie pocket, just to check it was still there, and smiled. They didn't know what this was yet, but it was growing, like a secret planted between floor tiles and late-night laughter, and they were both just curious enough to let it. Jessica found him already waiting the next night, same bench, same hoodie. But something in his posture was different, more open, like he had something on his chest he was finally ready to set down. She sat beside him without a word. The usual teacup waited for her on the ledge, and she accepted it silently, wrapping her hands around the warmth. After a long pause, she whispered, Do you ever get tired of hiding? Alan glanced sideways. You mean the hoodie? Or the rest of it? Jessica gave a tired smile. Both. He nodded slowly. Yeah, more than I admit. She took a sip of tea, then spoke without looking at him. My dad left when I was 10, just walked out. One day he said he was going for gas, never came back. Alan didn't interrupt, just listened. My mom got sick the year after, she continued. At first it was just fatigue, then it became something scarier. I dropped out of school to work, been scrubbing office floors ever since. She exhaled. It's funny, I don't even know what I'd say if I saw him again. Maybe nothing, maybe just, Why did you make me think men disappear? Alan's voice was quiet. I don't have an answer for that, but I can tell you this. I almost became that man too. Jessica looked up. I wasn't a great father, he admitted, eyes cast down at his hands. Not in the beginning. I thought working late, Making money, covering bills, meant I was doing my job. He took a breath, steady but slow. But then one night, Julia, my daughter, asked me something. She was holding one of her drawings and she said, "Why do I only see you in pictures, Daddy?" Jessica's eyes widened slightly. Alan's voice cracked just a little. She was 4. And she said it like she wasn't angry, just curious, like she had already accepted it. Jessica was silent. "That night," Alan continued, "I sat outside her room for an hour, didn't even go in. I just watched her sleep and thought, what am I doing?" He swallowed hard. "I changed after that. I come home early now. I read her bedtime stories. I eat dinner with her, even if it's just cereal. I don't take meetings after 6, and I never leave without saying goodbye." Jessica was quiet, letting the words settle. Then she said softly, "She's lucky." "I wasn't always the man she deserved," he said, "but I'm trying to become him." There was a long pause. Then Alan turned to her. "You know why I noticed you that first night? You didn't ask questions. You didn't expect anything. But you saw something important and treated it with care." Jessica blinked. "You show up," he said simply, "even when no one's watching. That's rare." She looked down, unsure what to say. No one had ever said something like that to her. Alan let the silence stretch before he added, "I think being present isn't just about being there, it's about showing up for people. You've been showing up for your mom, for strangers, even for me." Jessica finally looked at him, and for the first time she didn't see a hoodie or mystery or the man who wandered the halls at night. She saw someone who had lost, who had learned, and who had chosen to stay, and something inside her shifted. Just a little. Just enough. She set her cup down and said softly, "It's nice not having to carry all the weight alone." Alan nodded. "You never should have had to." For a moment, nothing else mattered. Not titles, not money, not secrets. Just 2 people in the middle of the night, finally seen by someone else. And sometimes that was enough to start healing. The next night, Jessica found a paper cup waiting for her on the handle of her cleaning cart. Steam curled from the lid, still warm, still fresh, as if someone had timed it just right. Like they knew when she'd arrive. Taped neatly on top was a yellow sticky note with handwriting she recognized now. Clean, slightly angular, too careful for someone casual. "You said you couldn't sleep. Hope this helps." Jessica stared at it for a moment, the corners of her mouth curling. She looked up and down the hallway, empty. She lifted the cup and brought it to her nose. Chamomile, gentle, familiar. The scent hit her deeper than expected, like a memory she didn't know she missed. She took a sip, letting the warmth run down her throat, slow and soothing. Her chest softened in places she hadn't realized had grown tense. She leaned against the wall and stood there longer than usual. That night, she didn't see Alan. But the following evening, she came prepared. As she pushed her cart past the vending machine alcove on the 15th floor, her floor, there he was again, seated casually on the same bench, hood down, elbows on knees. The glow from the vending machine cast a bluish hue across his face. He looked like someone trying not to look like someone. But Jessica had already seen past that. She didn't slow down, just walked by and dropped something into his lap. He looked down. A napkin. Scrawled in thick pen, "Next time green tea." He chuckled quietly. Looked up just in time to catch her half-smile before she disappeared around the corner with her cart. From that night forward, the quiet ritual grew. Sometimes he left peppermint, other times sleepy time blend or lavender-infused black tea. Always warm, always waiting. Each cup bore a note, some funny, some philosophical. One read, "Too much caffeine is bad for cleaning accuracy. Consider this preventive care." Another was a childlike doodle of a dragon with crooked wings reading a book. The caption, "For your inner night." Jessica never left those notes unanswered. Her replies were just as varied: napkins, coffee sleeves, the backs of invoice sheets. "Your dragon needs flight school," she wrote once. "Better than machine cocoa," another read. And one night, after a particularly hard shift, she wrote only, "Thank you for remembering I exist." She hadn't meant for it to be so raw, but it was. Because in that tower of glass and steel, surrounded by people too busy to meet her eyes, Alan did something no one else ever had. He saw her. Not just as a janitor, not as a blur in the background of polished offices, as a person. And slowly, almost without planning it, she began to see him too. Not the man with quiet eyes and warm tea, but the one behind it, the one who listened, who waited, who remembered. Their conversations never lasted long. No time, no place for lingering, but the connection was steady, silent, sacred. They never called it friendship, never labeled it, but they knew. They were building something real, in the quiet between elevators and polished floors. Then, one night, Jessica brought something more than a note. She found him in his usual spot. He was holding a thermos this time, flipping through emails on his phone. He looked up when she approached and straightened instinctively. She handed him a thin paperback, worn, taped on one corner. "For Julia," she said. He blinked, took it slowly. The cover read, "Bedtime Tales for Brave Girls." Inside the front page, a child's name had been written once in pencil, faint now, nearly erased. Jessica glanced away. It's second-hand, but the stories are still whole. Alan didn't speak right away. He ran a thumb over the frayed edge of the book, eyes scanning the faded title. He nodded slowly. "She'll love this," he murmured. "This is the kind of book she'll ask me to read over and over." Jessica smiled, soft and shy. "Then it's perfect." He looked at her then, really looked at her, not just with gratitude, but something gentler, something deeper. He didn't say thank you. He didn't need to. She had given him something not even money could buy, a reminder that someone else cared about what mattered to him most, his child. That night they didn't stay long. No small talk, no teasing notes. Jessica returned to her cleaning, her steps a little lighter. Alan stayed on the bench a while longer, the book resting on his knee. No one else ever knew about their cafe. No one needed to. That was what made it theirs. The television in the janitor's break room rarely showed anything other than muted news loops or game highlights no one watched. Jessica usually ignored it. That night, she stood by the microwave, arms crossed over her sweatshirt, waiting for the cheap plastic bowl of soup to rotate its way to edible. Her shoulders were sore, her feet ached. She had been scrubbing harder than usual lately, trying to keep her mind blank, her body busy. The familiar hum of the news barely registered, until a voice made her still. Alan Reed, CEO of Reed Tech, today announced a new initiative focused on AI infrastructure for underfunded school systems. Her head turned slowly toward the screen, and there he was. The man behind the podium wore a navy suit, perfectly tailored. His hair was neat, his smile poised, every movement deliberate. The Alan on the screen was the embodiment of control, commanding, charming, crisp. Jessica's hands dropped to her sides, her chest hollowing. It was him. Night guy. Her night guy. Except not. Images flashed, conference rooms, investor meetings, ribbon-cutting ceremonies. Then a still photo appeared. Alan kneeling beside a little girl in a white dress, both of them laughing beneath a cascade of balloons. "Julia." Jessica's knees buckled slightly, and she caught herself on the edge of the counter. The paper napkin in her hand crumpled without her realizing. Her breath felt thin. It didn't make sense, and yet it made perfect sense. The calm assurance in his voice, the way he listened so fully, the weight behind every word. Of course, he wasn't just some nameless guard. Of course, the warmth and gravity he carried belonged to someone powerful. But he never said. He never told her the truth. No warning, no explanation, just pretended. Let her pour herself out night after night while he drank his tea and held on to his secret. Jessica felt her stomach twist. He had lied. Or maybe not outright, but he'd allowed her to believe something false. He had worn the hoodie-like armor and let her think he was one of her people, the late shift, overlooked kind, the ones who swept around important people like ghosts in the night. She wasn't mad that he was rich. She was mad because he let her be vulnerable with a stranger while hiding who he really was. She left her soup on the counter and walked out before it finished spinning. The next night, she didn't go to the 15th floor, nor the one after that. She changed her route, asked her supervisor for earlier hours. She made up an excuse about needing more daylight to help care for her mom, anything to not have to face the places where they used to talk, where silence had once been comfortable, shared, even sacred. Now it just echoed. He still left tea for her, carefully balanced cups on her cart handle, right where he used to place them. The first one was chamomile, then came green tea, then peppermint. No notes, no jokes, just the warmth and the ache that came with it. She didn't touch them. Not because she didn't want to, because she wanted to too much. She scrubbed harder, cleaned with a fury that didn't match the soft music in her earbuds or the hush of the building. Her notebook filled with things she couldn't say: anger, confusion, betrayal, and guilt. Because the worst part wasn't the lie, it was that she missed him, his laugh, his dumb dragon drawings, the way he said, "You always show up," like it meant something sacred. The way he saw her without once trying to fix her. That was the part she couldn't forgive. Not him. Herself. She had let her walls down, and now she was left sweeping up the pieces of something that had felt real, maybe even beautiful. 1 week passed, then 2. Still she stayed away. Still she told herself she was fine. But every night, when she parked her cart for the last time, her eyes drifted to the cup holder, empty, hollow like her chest. Until one night, there was something there, and this time, it wasn't tea. Jessica stepped out of the employee exit just after 4 a.m., exhausted, her hair tied into a loose knot, backpack slung over one shoulder. The street was still asleep, painted in quiet shadows and flickering orange streetlights. She almost missed him. Alan was sitting on the cold concrete steps, elbows on his knees, head down. No suit, just jeans, sneakers, and the same old hoodie. When he looked up at the sound of the door, their eyes met, and she stopped. She didn't speak. She didn't move. He stood slowly, not rushing, as if afraid she'd bolt. "I've been waiting here since midnight," he said. Jessica crossed her arms. "You shouldn't have. I know," he said softly, "but I had to see you." She didn't say anything, just stared, her face unreadable. "I didn't lie to you, Jessica," he continued. "I just didn't say, because for once I wasn't a CEO. I wasn't Alan Reed with a calendar full of deals and handshakes and headlines. I was just a man drinking tea with a woman who saw me." She exhaled slowly, shaking her head. "You let me believe you were someone else." "I let you believe I was someone simple," he corrected, "because being with you made me feel like I could be." He stepped closer, cautiously. "And maybe I wanted to see if someone could like me, without the name, the title, the money." Jessica's throat tightened, but she held her ground. "So this was a test?" "No," he said quickly. "It was real. Every moment, every cup of tea, every napkin note. I didn't plan any of it. I just didn't want it to stop." She looked away. Alan took a breath, then spoke again, slower this time. "My wife died when Julia was 3. A sudden illness. We didn't see it coming. One day she was making pancakes, the next she was gone." Jessica's eyes softened despite herself. "After that, Julia stopped talking," Alan continued. "For 4 months, nothing, not a word. She just sat on the floor with her crayons, silent. I tried everything, therapists, toys, songs. Nothing worked." He swallowed. "Then, one night, I came home late from work, again. I found her asleep in the hallway, curled up with a photo of her mom. That's when I knew. She didn't need more stuff. She needed me, the real me. He looked at Jessica, voice quiet now. She started speaking again when I started laughing again, and I started laughing again when I met you. Jessica's lips parted, but she said nothing. Alan reached into his jacket and pulled out something wrapped in tissue. Carefully, he handed it to her. She unwrapped it slowly. It was the book. Bedtime Tales for Brave Girls, but now it was worn, its corners bent, pages marked with colorful scribbles and stickers, and on the first page, under her old handwriting, was a new note in purple crayon. Daddy and I loved this one the most. Jessica stared at it, speechless. Alan took a step back. I'm not asking for forgiveness, I just wanted you to see, to know that what we shared, it wasn't pretend. It changed things. It changed me. He hesitated, then said, almost a whisper, "Can she hear your stories again?" Jessica looked down at the book. Her fingers trembled slightly, and though she didn't speak, Alan saw it, the way her shoulders lowered, just a little, the way her eyes softened, just enough. He gave her a small nod, then turned and walked down the steps, not waiting for an answer. He hadn't come to win. He had come to be honest. And now it was up to her. It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon when Jessica's phone buzzed with an unknown number. She almost let it go to voicemail. Most unknown numbers led to bills she could not pay or spam offers pretending to care. But something about the timing, the stillness of the room, the sunlight falling through her faded blinds, made her swipe to answer. "Hello?" There was a short pause. Then a tiny, trembling voice. "Miss Jessica?" Jessica's heart squeezed. "Yes? Who's this?" "It's Julia," the voice said shyly. "Daddy said, 'You tell better stories than books. Can you come tell one today?'" Jessica closed her eyes. Julia. She hadn't heard that name out loud in weeks, not since she had walked away from the rooftop, the tea, the quiet way Alan had handed her a book filled with crayon drawings and something that might have been hope. She started, her voice faltering. "I don't know," but Julia didn't give her time to finish. "Daddy's been sad," the little girl whispered. "But not when you're around." Jessica swallowed hard. The silence that followed was heavier than any story she had ever tried to tell. She looked around her tiny apartment, the laundry half-folded on the chair, the half-read book on her pillow. Her reflection in the mirror, older than 19 but younger than she felt. She didn't know him anything, but that wasn't the point. "I'll come," she said softly. 1 hour later, she stood at the foot of a narrow walkway lined with marigolds. They danced gently in the breeze, golden and unbothered by the world. The townhouse was cozy, painted a soft blue with shutters that needed repainting. A wind chime clinked faintly above the porch. Jessica hesitated, lifting her hand to knock, when the door burst open before her knuckles touched wood. Julia launched herself out with the speed of joy. Jessica caught her mid-run, her arms going instinctively around the little girl's shoulders. "I missed you," Julia said into her sweater, her voice muffled but certain. Jessica's throat tightened. "I missed you too, little lion." Then she looked up, and there he was, Alan, standing in the doorway. No hoodie, just a simple button-down, sleeves casually rolled. His expression unreadable, yet entirely open. No smugness, no regret, just presence. Jessica held Julia's hand and stood slowly. "Hi," she said. "Hi," he echoed, his voice a little hoarse. Nothing more was needed. The house was warm in the way lived-in homes are. Quiet clutter, soft lighting, real life. There were toys tucked beside a bookshelf, dishes drying on a rack, and a hand-drawn picture on the fridge labeled "My Family" with bright, uncertain letters. 3 stick figures. Jessica tried not to stare. She and Julia settled onto a deep gray couch, the kind that held stories in its cushions. Alan sat on the floor nearby, not intruding, not distant. Julia placed a book in Jessica's lap. Its spine was taped, pages worn and marked with sticker stars and marker hearts. Jessica smiled. You ready?" Julia nodded and curled beside her. "Once upon a time," Jessica began, "there was a small, fierce girl who lived in a very tall castle." Her voice softened into rhythm. "She gave the dragons snorts and the kings grumbles." Julia giggled, wide-eyed. Alan didn't speak. He didn't need to. The way he looked at Jessica said everything. Admiration, relief, home. The story lasted maybe 20 minutes. The feeling stretched far longer. When the final sentence fell like a hush across the room, Julia clapped once, then nestled against Jessica's side, yawning. Then, as if sleep unlocked her truth, she mumbled, "Daddy smiles more since he met you." Jessica froze. Alan looked down, his hands clasped loosely in his lap. The words hung like stars. Jessica brushed a strand of hair from Julia's cheek. "I think he helped me smile too." She looked up, and Alan was already looking at her. Nothing between them now, no suits, no schedules, no secrets. Jessica stood, walked toward him slowly, heart in her throat. When she reached him, she held out her hand. Alan took it. No promises, no apologies, just a quiet beginning. Because some stories are too real to end. The sign above the door read, "Quiet Chapter." It was hand-painted, slightly crooked, with curling vines surrounding the letters. Below it, in smaller font, was a phrase etched in fading gold. "A place for pages, peace, and people who stay." A year had passed. Inside, the scent of lavender tea and old books filled the air. Children's books lined the back wall. Soft lamps glowed beside mismatched armchairs. A chalkboard listed the day's specials. Lemon balm tea, apricot scones, story hour at 6. Jessica stood behind the counter, tying a green apron around her waist. Her blonde hair was clipped up loosely, and there was a smudge of flour on her cheek. She looked tired, but she was glowing. It was a soft kind of happiness, the kind that came from building something brick by brick, page by page. Across the room, Julia was curled up in the children's corner, flipping through a picture book, legs swinging off a velvet poof. She wore her favorite purple cardigan and had already finished her scone. Jessica glanced at the clock. Almost 7. Right on cue, the bell over the door jingled, and there he was. Same hoodie, same smile. Alan stepped inside like he had every night for months now. He didn't own the place, technically, but he'd funded it quietly, anonymously, insisting that her name was the one that belonged on every piece of paper. "Hey," he said, brushing snow off his sleeves. "Hey," Jessica replied, reaching for a tea towel. "Back for dish duty?" "Wouldn't miss it." He stepped behind the counter, rolled up his sleeves, and began drying cups like it was second nature. Jessica leaned against the sink, watching him. "You know, you're ruining your mysterious persona. Most CEOs don't do dishes in old hoodies." He grinned. "Guess I'm not most CEOs," she smirked. "Still the night guy?" He paused, looked at her, really looked at her, and said softly, "For you, always." She felt her breath catch just slightly. Alan reached into his pocket and pulled something out. It was the old keychain, the one she had found over a year ago, but now it had something new. A second ring, smaller, with a charm shaped like a tiny book, engraved on the inside, "Come home safe." All 3 of us. Jessica stared at it, eyes wide. He held it out, voice gentle. "I was never looking for a fairy tale, not after everything. But if you'll have us, not just for stories, but for whatever comes next." She didn't cry. She just smiled, softly, steadily. "I never wanted a fairy tale," she said. "Just someone who stays." Alan stepped closer, slid the keychain into her palm. Their fingers lingered. Julia looked up from her book just in time to see them pull into a hug. "Ew," she giggled loudly from across the room. "Are you going to kiss, or do I need to turn the page?" Jessica and Alan laughed, really laughed, and broke apart just long enough to pull her into the embrace. The 3 of them stood there, surrounded by books, tea steam, and light. No cameras, no fanfare, just peace. Outside, snow began to fall softly onto the sidewalk. Inside, the sound of soft jazz played over the speakers. And from the children's corner, Julia's voice rang out brightly. Once upon a time, there was a bookstore where love lived in every chapter, and this time, they didn't need to wait for a new page. They were already living it. If this story touched something in your heart, the quiet resilience, the unexpected kindness, the love that grows not in grand gestures but in small, honest moments, then you are already part of what we believe in. We share tales that don't just entertain, but heal, remind, and restore your faith in simple human connection. Subscribe to our channel so you never miss a moment that might just change the way you see love, family, or even yourself. Because sometimes, the softest stories